We were docked in Hamburg for 10 days. The ship was in dry dock making repairs. No shows for me to do as there was no passengers on board. Maintenance was the only thing to do for my team, but that was the only 10 AM till 5 PM. We were taking things slow just to spread out the workload and try to look busy. On the first night we were there, we were told to stay away from the place called the Reeperbahn. We were told that this place was full of bars, sex shops and hookers, and that it was a mafia-run town. A few of my associates just looked at each other and the grin of fun times was on all our faces. After work, we scrubbed up and dressed in our finest. I was wearing only a t-shirt and jeans. On the gangway, I didn't clock that other people were dressed in layers. I got off the ship, then promptly turned around and returned to my cabin to pick up my jacket and gloves. It was fucking freezing, cold enough to freeze your cock to your leg. I returned to the gangway and then disembarked. The team were waiting for me, all excited for what was awaiting us. What awaited us on this dark day of our Lord, the 27th of March 2013. After negotiating the maze of barbed wire fence out of the docks, we encountered a tunnel that went under the river. After negotiating the maze of barbed wire fence out of the docks, we encountered a tunnel that went under the river and came out of the steps to the Reeperbahn. El Dorado was on my mind. As my vision of the road panned out from right to left, all I could hear in my head was the song, An Obsession of Gold from the Good, the Bad and the Ugly. It just went in time with the reality of the situation. It started off slow as I saw adult cinemas, then the music started to speed up as I saw peep shows and live sex shows that show adverts. As we were walking up the street, we saw girl after girl in the windows and on the street corners. These girls had a sort of uniform about them. They were all dressed in puffer jackets and neon coloured trousers, which reacted well with the neon and UV lights that were lighting up the street. I looked at the Canadian. His jaws dropped to the pavement. The only way I could think of closing it was to use a car jack. Essex had a grin on his chops that was bigger than a Cheshire cat. We all pressed on with only one collective thought: we were going to have a fun night. We walked down the street in search of a busy looking bar. As we were about to cross the road, all of a sudden all three of us were set upon by the nocturnal beauties. I had a hot hooker link onto my arms on either side of me. They pulled themselves in tight to me. Must have been partly for the body heat and partly to make me feel slightly turned on, as though to say that I was the most attractive person in the world for that small moment in time. I have to admit, it did make me feel good, but I knew it was a lie. I just knew that they were both in competition for me to fuck them so they could get a nice chunk of financial compensation. I was getting touched up, not in the joy department, but very discreetly. A similar thing was happening to the other lads. I looked further into the neon lit horizon and there were lots more girls of this sort. My attention seeking person huggers were talking to me in German. I have to admit that I couldn't understand what the fuck they were on about, so I simply said, "Ladies, I don't understand." The next thing I heard was the word English. All the girls in this strip were now speaking English as we were passing them. The girls attached to my arm did this as there's a rule here: if I had mugged them off, someone else could try it on. I could have walked around like this all evening, but these girls were getting all impatient. They were hungry for cock and euros. For me, it was too early to be stripped of cash in that manner. Not that fucking a whore was my thing. "Ladies," I said, "it's too early. I haven't had my drinks yet." The hot Aryan on my left seductively turned my head towards her, brushing her hand down my face, all slow and deliberate. She had totally got my attention, so much so that she gave me a semi-on, another deliberate trick of the trade. I looked into her seductive eyes and said, "Can you recommend me any bars?" She got as close as she possibly could. She moved her mouth close to my ears and straight to her left hand down my chest. Damn, I wanted to deal with her. She had a way to work the pheromones. She whispered the name of a bar in my ear. For the love of me, I can't recall its name. She turned my head towards it and said that I should go there. Drinks were good and cheap. She moved her head in and kissed me. It was so seductive and deliberate. It pushed all my buttons, and some buttons that were never even there. I could feel my temperature rising, that I wanted to pull myself even closer and rub my hands down her until I got to her lower back. The reality was I was stood in the middle of the street with a fit Aryan whore kissing me. I must have looked so uncomfortable to the outside world. "This is for free," she said. Go in that bar and have some fun and come and find me later on so we can have as much fun as you like." She squeezed my ass and sent me on my way. The boys must have mugged off their pursuers much faster than I did, as they're waiting a bit down the road, just out of reach of these banker hookers. I pointed at this bar I was shown and we went in. It was dimly lit, with neon lights pointing out certain features such as the bar, the toilets and the poled podiums with some of the hottest girls you've ever seen dancing. It was a go-go club. Not quite a lap dancing place, but girls were wearing barely something, so a more tasteful place than we could have gone to. You had groups of girls there that were enjoying their drinks and talking amongst themselves. There were mixed groups, businessmen having an afternoon meeting with a beer in one hand and blackberries in the other. Most of all, there was rock music playing. This lady of the night knew how to have a fun time. We ordered a beer and found a table. The booze was flowing thick and fast. Beer after beer, shot after shot, the dance floor progressively filling up. We were on the floor going wild. Some of the Indian boys from the ship were there, but sat at a table not knowing where to look. They've never seen a place like this before. That I was certain about. I got bumped into on the dance floor and my beer went flying, covering a hot girl's trousers. I went over to apologise and offered her a drink. She didn't want one and insisted that she wanted me to swap trousers with her. She took me by the hand and dragged me into the toilets. She kicked off her heels and started to unbutton her fly. I gazed at her, jaw down on the floor. She was wearing the most revealing thong I'd ever seen. It was small and translucent. She was shaven, balded in a plucked chicken in her dry department. She looked at me. "Take them off," she said, in a thick Dutch accent. I did, with no further hesitation. I kicked off my boots and dropped them faster than you could say David Cameron is a cunt. I went over to her, sucking in my beer gut with jeans in hand. I got close to her and she took me by the hand. There was a very close proximity, beer gut hanging over my boxer shorts. I drunkenly went in for a kiss and it worked. Next thing I knew, I was getting off with her. I dragged her into the cubicle as we were making out. She put her hand down my boxers and started to tug me off. I slipped off her thong and moved into poke. What a sight to see. A hot Dutch girl in a buff getting mounted from behind by an Englishman with an overhanging beer gut, boxers around his ankles and still in his socks, standing on a piss-soaked floor. Both of our trousers were hung over the cubicle. There's nothing magical about this quickie, and it was a quickie. It was more of a piss-soaked floor one-off. She probably just split up with someone and wanted a revenge fuck. I, on the other hand, hadn't had any in quite some time. I think I was up on the deal. We put on each other's trousers. Her jeans rocked into my arse crack a bit. Mine was slightly baggy on her. Thank fuck for belts. One was already attached to my jeans as I was actually losing weight on my waistline. We went to the bar. I couldn't see my mates. I looked at my phone. There was a message on there. It was from the Canadian. It read, "Sorry you're going into the toilet with that girl. We've moved on. See you in the ship, champ." The Dutch girl couldn't see her mates either. She said, "Come back to mine and we can clean up and fuck some more." Damn, that was easy, I thought. We left the bar and started walking down the strip. She was as clingy as a tag nut and just wouldn't leave me alone on our walk back. We started to pass the barrage of hookers in the gauntlet. For the first time I wasn't getting harassed. I suppose it's because I had this Dutch girl on my arm. Then slap! Out of nowhere, a hand went across the face of this Dutch girl. I looked around and fuck me, it was the Aryan whore. The Dutch girl bounced back and with an almighty thump she twatted the Aryan girl in the face. Cunt, what was that slut floor? You always steal my clients on your night off. Fuck you. One of us just don't need to be paid for having fun. You fucking whore. It takes one to know one. The Aryan girl spat in the Dutch girl's face. The Dutch girl landed a punch at the Aryan girl's face. Then the ball began. You had men on the strip that was after some girly action stopped coaxing the hookers and turned their attention to the fight that was going on. One had even shouted, "Whore fight!" The Dutch girl grabbed the Aryan by the neck and started to ram her face into the wall. The Aryan looked confused at this point, but she didn't give up. The Aryan girl cunt punched the Dutch girl. She dropped to the floor like a used tampon. The Aryan girl started to stamp on the Dutch girl with her hooker's boots. The Dutch girl caught the Aryan mid-stamp, twisted her ankle and sent the Aryan to the floor. She then started to maul the Aryan's face with her large talons. The Aryan girl defended herself by starting to rip out the Dutch girl's hair. There was a sound of sirens. Shit. It was time to make a prompt escape. As the two hookers were on the cold winter floor clawing at each other's faces and yanking clumps out of each other's hair, I just ran and headed back to the ship. I have to admit, I did feel somewhat bad, But in the end, I just didn't want to explain to the captain and my boss why I would have been arrested. I just took the easy option, and in my opinion, the easiest option was always the better option.